Hey friends. Well, I had a wonderful session this morning with a fantastic client and a friend, and we got to there was something that came out of the conversations right at the beginning of the conversation. I just remember getting this flash. This happens to me a lot. I'll be working with someone, and either something they say or something I say or something that emerges from the because of the nature of the work, there are these epiphanies that we get to share that come out. And this one kind of came from, let me see, we were talking about, I remember what it was. It was some friends had been visiting, and it was kind of a tough time. And my client said, I as soon as I let myself admit that I wish they weren't coming, I felt so much better. and I had this recognition in that of something, certainly an experience that I've had many times, not just with friends who are in town at an inconvenient time, but with admitting something that I'm struggling not to think. It's like I don't want to admit that I'm having the thoughts. I want to pretend like I'm not having the thoughts. And that pretending I'm not having the thoughts is 90% of the stress of a stressful situation. Because after admitting that, nothing has changed. The situation hasn't changed. The fact that we wish it were different hasn't changed. The fact that we still have to go through it, the fact that it hasn't been alleviated hasn't changed. I mean, I'm not saying that maybe, again, this is like sort of, I'm working with the situation we were talking about this morning, and the point of my kind of like epiphany here is not that we can change a situation that we don't like, which it is also the case and is a separate thing. But in the case where there's something that's kind of inevitable, or at least we've decided that we're doing this, whether we like it or not, nothing has changed about what we have in front of us, except for everything we think about it. Because that kind of pressure cooker of having a feeling about something and then saying, but I'm not allowed to have that feeling. These are my friends. I am not the kind of person who would not want to see my friends. Right? That wrestling with the thoughts we're having is torture, because it means that in the moment, in the actual elapsing of this thing that we wish weren't happening, we can't even really feel the way we feel about it. The way we feel is not only uncomfortable, but it's problematic because it's uncomfortable, and it's not supposed to be uncomfortable. There's this war with what we're thinking and what we're feeling, and it's all kind of circular and self-compressed. It's like it immediately caves in on itself because we feel unpleasant things, and then we don't allow it, but we're not supposed, we for whatever reason believe we're not supposed to be feeling those unpleasant things. So we try to convince ourselves that we're not feeling those unpleasant things, but that's a lie. So now we're lying to ourselves, and there's this, it's a cluster. And as soon as we can just admit, I wish this weren't happening, or I wish they weren't here, or whatever it in the situation, whatever it is, whatever the kind of like taboo thought is, it's like all the all that tension, all that pressure goes out. And now it's like, oh wow, yeah, this is just how I feel. Okay, I'm allowed to feel how I feel. You know? And then from there, we'll probably make a better decision about whether or not to change something in the situation. You know, because a decision that we make, either to just, you know, suck it up and go through the situation, or to take action and change things, won't be coming from this over pressurized boiling over of feelings that we're trying not to feel. And I mean, this sounds so simple. It sounds so simple when I say it out loud. It sounds simple, and it is. It is very simple. But but it's also not insignificant. It's also a bigger deal than we might want to admit. You know, and then funny enough, later in the same conversation, I touched on something. We touched on something about how it feels to kind of evaluate an opportunity based on whether it feels light or dark, or light or heavy, because our mind has such an incredible ability to kind of pull us in the direction of decisions that come from, you know, all the things that the mind thinks are important, all the things that the mind wants to kind of all the aspects of identity that the mind is kind of tasked with defending. And so being willing, and even and it's really kind of a toolkit to be able to take a decision and just feel. It's almost like a homeopathic approach to decision making. I don't know if that's the right image, but it's like leaving out all of the psychological content, just putting it aside, and just feeling. If I say yes to this, does it feel light? Does it feel heavy? What do I feel? And keeping the mind out of it long enough to get a read, to get a stable read on what's really happening. Because again, the mind will go a mile a minute trying to tell us what's right, trying to tell us what we should be doing, trying to tell us why a heavy decision is actually a light decision, because for whatever reason we want to make that decision. Where it's either it's habitual, it's, you know, it's there's some draw there for the mind, or obvious alternative, a light decision that might be vastly expanding and incredibly nourishing for us. Why that's actually, no, that's either not for me, that's not right, that's not possible, that's not realistic, you know, whatever the case may be. But that sense of, like, you know, letting ourselves feel, it's clearly coming up for me powerfully right now, because there's some things on my plate where that's you know, I'm very much encouraging myself to take that approach. And it was really just the initial insight that I spoke about a minute ago was just really powerful today too, because I think so many of us are habituated, we're conditioned, we are just accustomed to editing our thoughts, constantly editing our thoughts. It's one of the kind of amazing things about human identity. It's we have an identity to ourselves. It's not even like our persona is something that we consciously broadcast out to the world, while behind the scenes we know that we're like the little man behind the curtain pulling all the strings, and it's actually all just a show. We want to feel that our persona outwardly is consistent inwardly. So so social and cultural rules, mores, that we want to be seen as fulfilling or being in accordance with, we have to inwardly work really hard to feel like we really are in accordance with them. And not liking people or being angry at someone or wishing somebody wasn't here, if that's not on the menu, if that doesn't fit, then man, we have to spend a good amount of time thinking it through and rationalizing it and finding out letting ourselves find some consistent structure of thought that looks like it'll stand. Hope the house of cards doesn't fall over, and that our identity will kind of like be somehow intact. But it's an awful lot of work to do that. It's an awful lot of work. And just letting that sort of, intern, again, this doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're going to go to the people who you wish weren't here and say, hey, I wish you weren't here, right? It's not that one for one. Letting the inner and the outer, letting ourselves be where we really are, and then being diplomatic and being, judicious and being empathetic, reciprocal, that we can trust ourselves to find that consistency gradually. It doesn't have to be violent or abrupt, but it's way less stressful to just allow ourselves to think the thoughts we're thinking, and to just allow ourselves to feel how we really feel. Way less stressful. Well, we would all live so. I wonder what human life expectancy would be if everybody just did that all the time. Can you imagine? We'd live to like 150 years because of all this tension and stress on our system would go away. Yeah. More meditation, I think, is the answer. It's the best I got. Anyway, thanks for following along today as I discover this for myself. I appreciate you. Much love. I'll see you tomorrow.